Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode. I'm Alex, I'm your nurse, and today we're talking about one of my favorite topics weight training. How the muscular system works, why lifting weights is one of the most useful tools that you can do for your health. This is where bro science meets healthcare. A lot of people will start lifting weights and then stop because they're afraid of getting bulky or looking bigger than they want. Others may feel like weight training just isn't for them, especially if their goal is not bodybuilding. All of that is fine, but lifting weights and weight training is one of the best things that you can do to improve your overall health. And we're going to talk about why. So today we're going to break down this from a biology perspective, how muscle works, what it really is, why lifting works on muscles, and what hypertrophy actually means. So, let's dig in. As always, I have to start with the anatomy. What muscle is structurally? So there's actually three types of muscles. There's cardiac muscle, which is only in your heart. Smooth muscle, which is in your organs. So this is involuntary musculature. So your lungs, your reproductive organs, or your intestines, all of those are smooth muscle. Then there's skeletal muscle, which is voluntary movement and posture and stability. And that's what we're mostly focusing on today is skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle is the tissue that allows you to move, stand upright, lift heavy objects, it stabilizes your joints. Muscle is an organized, adaptive tissue, not just bulk or aesthetics. Your skeletal muscles are made up of muscle fibers, and they're in bundles. And then within these, so there's a lot of terminology here, but I'm going to break it down simply. So we have the whole muscle, and then we have the fibers, but there's other little things in there. But then at the very basic unit, we have what are called sarcomeres. And sarcomeres are the contractile units within the muscles themselves. And so all of these fibers, right, we have the muscle, they attach to the bones via tendons, and that's how we allow this movement to happen in our bodies. But within these sarcomeres, again, they're the true working units. This is what allows for that contraction and extension of the muscle. So if we get into the physiology of this, there's two main proteins in the muscle tissue, actin and myosin. The names don't matter, just know they're there. There's two main rules that come with proteins. Proteins like to change shape when something binds to it, and changing shapes allows the proteins to bind and unbind with other things. So with every contraction in the muscle, there is a form of energy that is required called ATP. And this is what causes the binding and therefore the contraction of these sarcomeres or fibers within the muscle. So essentially, there's nerves and capillaries that are also in the muscles as well. And this is what supplies the blood with the nutrients and the oxygen and blood and also these neurochemicals that we're talking about that are allowing for this contraction. So when your brain decides it wants to move, a motor neuron is sent through the nervous system to the muscle to send a signal. And that signal triggers the release of calcium in the muscle cells, which allows the sarcomeres to connect and then slide or pull past each other. And that helps to contract or release and lengthen the muscle. So this also makes skeletal muscle a metabolically demanding organ. This is because that it requires so much energy to be used. Because muscle is a metabolically demanding tissue, the more muscle you have, the more energy your body needs, even at rest. So this is one reason why muscle plays a large role in metabolism and blood sugar regulation, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. This is also why consuming a higher protein count in your diet improves your muscular growth, but also helps to reduce muscle loss. The higher protein intake ensures that the muscles have enough protein to pull on so that they're not losing or wasting or expending what they already have. So, what happens when we lift weights? When you lift weights, you create mechanical tension on these muscle fibers, and this tension causes microscopic damage or tears that are tiny disruptions in the muscle structure. This is not harmful. This is just stimulus for adaptation. Okay, so your body will respond to this stimulus by repairing the muscle fibers, reinforcing them, and that makes them slightly thicker and stronger. And this is called muscle remodeling, and it's driven by repeated exposure over time, not just one workout. So think of this as a rubber band. Okay. If you have the rubber band, it's stretchy and elastic, right? So you pull and then you allow it to contract back, and you pull and you allow it to contract back. Over time, as you continue to do that, you may notice little tears or stretches in the elastic. That's your muscle. So when we go and we work out the muscle, we're going to get these tiny little tears. And I'm not talking about a ginormous rip where you need to go to the hospital, okay? It's just the stress that we're putting on the muscle, it's tearing a little bit. And so then when we go hydrate, rest, and fuel, that goes in, packs back on, refuels the muscle so that it's back to being where it needs to be, but it makes it a little bit stronger so that the next time that we do that, it can ideally withstand the stimulus. Okay, so this is why we get stronger, ideally, when we muscle train. And we're going to talk about how this comes into effect with getting bulky in a little bit. Okay, so hypertrophy. What is hypertrophy? This is the process by which muscle fibers increase in size. So essentially, it's just muscle growth. This happens primarily in response to mechanical tension, meaning the muscle is being asked to produce more force against resistance. When you lift weights, you create controlled stress on the muscle fibers, and that stress signals to the body to adapt by increasing that protein synthesis, which reinforces the muscle so it can better handle that stress in the future. So hypertrophy or muscle growth requires progressive overload, so continuing to exercise and increasing the amount that you're doing, either in reps or weights, each time you go. Adequate protein and calories. So we're eating typically in a surplus if we want to grow the muscle so that the muscle can grow and regenerate. And then time and recovery in order to rest. This is a slow, regulated process, not a sudden one. Importantly, muscle growth does not happen during one workout. It happens over time with consistent training. It happens with recovery and when the body has adequate nutrients, rest, and energy. Okay? So hypertrophy training typically involves moderate to heavy resistance, repetition ranges roughly between 6 and 12. We can get into higher ranges, like even up to 30 has been shown to have positive effects on the body. Adequate volume, meaning we're doing enough training in each session. Progressive overload over weeks to months. So again, you're progressively increasing the amount of weight that you are lifting over time, not just going for Mach 10 out the gate. And this can happen through increasing the weight that you're lifting with each session, increasing the repetitions, slowing your repetitions down and improving your tempo, or using better technique and control with the weight that you are lifting. So the muscle adapts specifically to the demand that's being placed on it, and that's why lifting changes your body composition more effectively than cardio alone. So from a health perspective, resistance training improves your insulin sensitivity, supports your bone density, reduces joint stress long term, improves your posture and stability, and protects against age-related muscle loss. And we'll get a little bit more into those as we progress through this episode. Next, though, we're talking about this bulky myth. And this, I talk to people and counsel patients about this all the time, and I get it, but it absolutely sends me every time because physiologically, this fear just doesn't hold up. So let's get into why. Strength and size are not the same thing. Actual muscle growth is a slow, resource-dependent process. As we talked about, you're going to be increasing the amount that you're lifting progressively over time, and you're going to typically be in a calorie surplus, meaning that you are taking in more calories for the muscles to utilize and then grow the muscle. If you're in a calorie deficit and you are lifting weights, you're probably not going to get bulky like the IFBB Pro lifters that you see or are potentially scared of looking like. For most people, especially women, significant bulk doesn't happen accidentally. Testosterone plays a major role in muscle growth, and most women simply don't have enough levels inherent in our body in order to produce those bodybuilder size muscles without intentional training and nutrition, ideally over multiple mesocycles or hypertrophy training sessions. And this is months of training consistently, okay? And it's probably typically more than just a few months. It's like months of months of months. So most people experience, when they start lifting, what they experience instead is just going to be increased muscle tone, improved shape, and then better strength without massive size changes. And that's not to say that you're not going to grow your muscle if you're going to go lift weights, like you're going to see some changes and you're going to see maybe a little bit of size improve there. And then, of course, for guys, the testosterone, that's just going to naturally increase for you. But I just want, particularly for women, I hear this more from women of not wanting to get bulky. I think society has really kind of ruined us in the fitness industry to say lifting weights is just for men and muscle is masculine. And I think we're really setting ourselves up for really poorly aged society if we continue to believe that, because there's so much benefit that you can get from lifting weights outside of just getting larger muscles. So we're going to get into what that involves. There are many benefits that it can improve your health, okay? So it will make you stronger, obviously, and reduce your injury risk as a result. So gaining strength allows you to perform daily tasks so much easier. So carrying heavy groceries or running around with your kids. It helps protect from injury from normal movements such as bending or twisting or lifting, and it makes the strength around your major joints. It helps to reinforce that. So ideally, we can avoid any joint related injuries, particularly as we get older. And this is because the muscle can handle the load and the direction that's being placed on it, because you've already done that with the resistance training, whichever one you do, in the gym in a controlled setting again. So strength training also increases the joint range of motion. This allows for greater mobility and flexibility. So those with weaker muscles tend to have less range of motion and flexibility in their muscles or in their joints, and that's why they're going to be more at a increased risk of injury. This will also help to decrease your risk of falls. So research shows that exercise will decrease your risk of falls, but strength training is especially effective at this. One study found that training in the legs especially is crucial for reducing the fall risk, and many forms of strength training had been shown to be effective. So it doesn't have to just be going and lifting in the gym. It can be Tai Chi or resistance bands or some body weight exercises. I'm going to advocate for going and lifting some weights, but there are other options if that's just not your thing. Muscle strength training also burns more calories efficiently. As we talked about earlier, it's a metabolically demanding organ. So strength training helps boost your metabolism in two ways. Building muscle increases your metabolic rate. Muscles are more metabolically active than fat mass, which allows you to burn more calories at rest. And then the metabolic rate is increased after a strength training session. So this means that you're still burning additional calories hours and even days after each strength training workout, okay? Strength training also decreases your abdominal fat and ideally overall fat, but fat stored around the abdomen, especially visceral fat, is associated with an increased risk of chronic diseases. And this can include type 2 diabetes, certain types of cancer, heart disease. So we want to reduce as much of that residual visceral fat in our abdomen as we can, because this not only looks better, but also helps to make us feel better and avoid any other comorbidities or health conditions. Strength training also improves your heart health. Regular strength training exercise can decrease your blood pressure, and it's been found that it can help to lower your LDL and your total cholesterol. So the LDL is the bad cholesterol. And so that's all good. We want lower fat levels in our body so that our body can have adequate blood flow and appropriately function. Okay, strength training helps to make your bones stronger. We talked a little bit about this, but it's crucial for bone development. And this is because the weight-bearing exercises put temporary stress on your bones, and that sends the message to the bones and the bone-building cells within them to take action. So they'll produce more calcium, more vitamin D, and this will rebuild the bones and make them stronger. And this is another effect in helping with aging and longevity, but also reducing injury risk and falls in the future. And then we got to talk about the brain health and the mood and the mental health aspects of weight training. Regular weight training can boost your mood and improve your mental health. Sources have shown that strength training reduces anxiety and boosts your mood, and this is because of endorphins. I think I mentioned this before, but we've all heard Elle Woods, endorphins make you happy, and happy people just don't go kill their husbands. So this can help improve our overall brain health and our mood. Those who engage in strength training may have better brain health and protection against age-related cognitive decline as well, which is really interesting. Resistance training may have a neuroprotective effect, and this is because there's an increased expression of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So this is linked to memory and learning. So essentially it improves your memory and your learning. So studies in older adults have pointed to significant improvements in memory after participating in strength training compared to those who did not. But more research is needed. So hopefully we get more on that. I'd love to learn more myself. And then overall, just better quality of life, especially as you age. It's going to help improve your longevity. Studies have linked strength training to increased health-related quality of life in older adults from all of these reasons that I have listed. So, nursing perspective, sustainable weight training. From a clinical standpoint, muscle is protective. We want strong, healthy muscles to be able to help us move more efficiently, reduce injury risk, and improve metabolism and insulin sensitivity, as well as improve our bone density, joints, and then as a result of all of these, our longevity and our aging. So the goal with weightlifting is not extremes, it's just consistency. You don't need to lift heavy every day. You don't need to train to exhaustion, and you don't need to chase soreness. You need progressive, recoverable stimulus on a plan that works for you. We often see clinically not people lifting too much. It's people under fueling or under recovering or not practicing safe and proper technique or avoiding resistance training altogether that's causing health issues. Sustainable weight training prioritizes consistency over intensity, adequate recovery, proper fueling and hydration, and then realistic expectations. So my recommendations for you, if you're looking to get started or continue what you've already started, I always say the best exercise is the exercise you will do. So find something that works for you. You don't have to start lifting the most heavy weight on your first session. You will have to build up. And again, if you want to find a different form other than going and lifting weights in a gym or using machines, that's perfectly fine. The important part is that we're doing something to stimulate the muscle and some muscle growth so that we can reap the benefits that I've just talked about. So if you are starting lifting, start small. Lift the weight that you can handle for roughly 10 to 12 reps. And then as you get comfortable with the movement and your body adjusts to that after several sessions, you can start to work to increase the weight progressively. Be sure to focus on technique. This is always something that I really advise because we want to keep ourselves safe. So many people are in the gym doing weird things that don't actually help, but that could actually be harmful. It's gotten better lately, particularly with the advent of more accurate fitness information and health-focused content, but there are still some weird things being tossed around by some influencers, so just beware. When we're lifting, though, focusing on our technique is going to increase our safety as well as our outcomes. Pay attention to things like, are your joints aligned? Is your core engaged? Do I have control of this weight? If the answers to any of those is no, stop the exercise, realign, maybe drop down in the amount of weight that you're pulling, and then start again. Reassess and keep going. When you're lifting, it's important to focus on the stretch of the muscle. This means that the muscle is in the lengthened position during the exercise. And so stretching the muscle when it's under the tension of the weight is what creates the most stimulus that we're looking for when we're trying to build the muscle. So this is why we want to do deep squats. And again, we don't want to go so deep that we lose the integrity or the technique and therefore the core engagement and the safety in the exercise. But when you're going in the squat and you've got that hinge on your hips, you're stretching that glute and those hamstrings to the point that it's really bearing that load on that stretched muscle. And so then when you come back up, you go again, you're stretching that muscle again. And this isn't like recovery stretching or yoga stretching where you're lengthening the muscle. Okay. I just want to make sure, because I guess the distinction that I'm trying to make here is I feel like when I was growing up, the fitness advice was to focus on the contraction, right? So when you do a bicep curl, focus on the contraction, really contract that muscle, and that's how you build it. And studies have started to show the opposite. It's actually just stretch. So when you've got that muscle stretched and it's under that load and stimulus from that weight, that is when it's getting the most tear, so it can then repair, okay? So just focus on the lengthened position the most when you're on your machine or your weightlifting or whatever your exercise you're doing, okay? For best results, ensure you're completing a full range of motion on the exercise, again, to your ability and safety. In other words, utilize the full movement around a joint, okay? I think a big part of getting into the gym too is the mental hurdle. I always say fitness is as much of a mental game as it is a physical one. So if you're in the gym and you're worrying about what other people think of you, believe me, I get it. I still get these thoughts too. Everybody says, nobody's paying attention, nobody's watching. And I think that's not entirely true because I think we all are, because we're all afraid of the same thing. We're all afraid of being watched and judged. So I don't say that to say, oh, everybody's watching you and judging you. I just say that to put us all in the same boat and say we're all worried about the same things. So let's just show up and lift some weights anyways and take care of our health. So I don't say that to diminish. I get it. Not everybody wants to go to the gym and be, particularly ladies, like I get it. You don't want to be going and lifting with all the men all the time. Me, I don't care. I'm gonna be lifting those weights, but I get it. It's not for everybody. So again, find what works for you. But if the mental hurdle is the biggest step keeping you from getting into the gym, maybe buy some weights and get started at home till you get comfortable with the exercises, and then you'll start going to a gym. Or go to a smaller gym if you have an option where there's less people. Or ladies, if you have the option of going to a women's only gym, if the men is a concern for you, then you could start doing that. Maybe even find a friend to go with you to the gym so you can be nervous together and keep each other accountable. But progressively, ideally, as you continue to show up and get more comfortable with the equipment and the movement and your body and the weights, you would hopefully continue to show up and find it easier to keep doing so. Because again, this is one of the best things that you can do for yourself, and I'm going to advocate for this until the cows come home. Okay? So, my key takeaways for you from today. Muscle is a metabolically important tissue, not just aesthetic, and it has so many functions other than just lifting things. Weight training works by creating a controlled stress that the body learns to adapt to. Hypertrophy or muscle growth is slow, intentional, and resource dependent. And bulky muscle doesn't happen accidentally. It comes from direct and repeated training over time, particularly paired with a caloric surplus. Weight training isn't about lifting the most or developing super large muscles and looking like a body that you don't want. It's about supporting the body that you already have. Understanding the science behind muscle growth hopefully will help to remove some of the fear and replace it with some agency for you. If this episode helped you to understand weight training, consider liking and subscribing and share it with somebody who could benefit. I'll see you guys next week, but send me any questions that you have my way. And thank you, as always, for listening.